Okay, you all good? Let's do it. Hello and welcome to the B2C Lead Generation Podcast. And today's episode is entitled, "Do you have more clients than you think?" I'm going to explain what that means a bit later on in the show. And instead, I'm simply going to welcome Lead Tech Nigel Borwell, CEO, to the show. How you doing, Nigel?
Great, thanks. Nice to see you, Daniel. Simon.
Thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. And yes, Simon's here too for people who are listening and not watching the video. So just to kick things off, can you tell us a little bit about Lead Tech and what you guys do?
Sure. So Lead Tech are a lead generation business, I guess. We work predominantly in the kind of financial services space, in particularly the financial advice market. We've been around for quite a while, been doing what we do since 2008. We work with hundreds of financial advisors, helping them grow their businesses. Companies of all shapes and sizes, from individual advisors up to multinational financial brands. We're one of the top 3 companies in the UK serving that market. We generate around about 10,000 leads a month. There's 40 people here at Lead Tech HQ, just north of Leeds. I guess that gives you a little bit of an overview of the business.
Just for anyone listening as well, Nigel's offices have one of the most beautiful views I've seen in the UK for an office. Obviously, you can't see on a podcast, but it's a beautiful river view. I saw a post someone did on LinkedIn with it, and it looks incredible. Yeah,
thanks. It's certainly a really attractive aspect to the business. In fact, the offices are great. You know, we've really spent a lot of time sort of designing the offices, and obviously the location's fab. We walk into the office, or we haven't done for about a year, obviously because of the pandemic. But certainly, as everybody's looking forward to getting back to the office, you kind of drive into the car park, get out of your car, and the first thing you see is just, you know, endless fields next to the river. So it's cool. It's a really nice place to work.
I wonder if the guys at your place, rather than being like, I don't want to go into the office, you know, like, oh, it's better work from home, we're all like, the view's shit, I want to get into the office, I want to look over a river and the hills and the sheep.
Yeah, typical Yorkshire, but I hope so. I mean, you can have too much of anything, can't you? I think everyone's a little bit fatigued from working from home and being on Zoom calls. I'm absolutely sure that we're all kind of chomping at the bit to get back into the office more regularly. We are looking to come back in now. I think we're on a couple of days a week at the moment. And it's nice just to kind of get a little bit of a balance, to be honest with you, Simon.
Yeah.
So just to kind of intro how lead gen works in your industry, is it as people listening would expect, or is anything different about doing lead gen in the financial services compared to other industries or other sectors rather?
I mean, fundamentally, how we generate leads, I'm sure it's very similar. But I mean, essentially, you know, whilst it's not a regulated activity in this space, I think we're very, very acutely aware that we're generating leads for our kind of partners, the clients and brands that are regulated, and they're accountable to the FCA, and obviously we're accountable to them. So we have to be really more sensitive to how we go about that lead generation activity, which I think is a good thing. Really tunes into some best practices, I think.
Does that mean you have to work more closely with the partners and brands as well? Because they're not just going to sign stuff off like willy-nilly and go, yeah, that's fine, go ahead with it. It's more like make sure the T's are crossed, the I's are dotted and everything else.
I mean, ultimately, as I say, they're kind of responsible for those journeys, and I think they are, in theory, supposed to be quite transparent about how they acquire customers. And I think part of what we do is work with them to maybe provide and evidence that, and being transparent about our journeys is part of that process, Simon. As I said, they're much more sensitive to how these leads are generated. In terms of how we work with them, I guess that goes into quite a kind of broad subject, but essentially we try to build real close working relationships with our partners. And over the years, I think we've kind of set out a little bit of a framework for that. And, you know, that might change based on the size of the business, the resources they've got available to them, and how much experience they've got kind of working leads will depend on how we work with them, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It's always good, I find, to have like a process around, like you were saying, a sort of structure that partners come into, and it leaves no surprises or anything. And it makes sure that everyone is aware sort of internally and the client of what's going to happen, and you know, what to expect from the leads and the conversions and how to work them and stuff like that. It's it's a really good idea.
And I want to come back to sort of your beliefs, and you mentioned how you believe in the transparency and stuff, and come back to that in a bit. But working in that sector, does having something like the FCA make it just inherently more like transparent as a whole, do you think, compared to other sort of sectors? Or?
Absolutely. As I said before, I think it's a really, really good thing. It kind of really encourages best practice, which we hugely believe in. You know, as a business, you know, I've said this to Simon on a few occasions. We've talked about kind of almost seeing what our role as sat between, you know, two customers essentially. You know, we've got our partners that we work with and supply leads to, but ultimately seeing, you know, a consumer as a person who's got a need rather than a piece of data that we're ultimately passing, you know, commoditizing and passing through to one of our kind of partners. So it really kind of is quite aligned. I think it's one of the reasons why we really enjoy working in this space.
Yeah, it's I think it's the thing that the sort of, not necessarily brands can miss, but the attitude around like the lead generation piece can be, is that when you do it like that, it's like a really valuable service, and not just for the brand that's getting the leads, but actually for the consumer or the prospect coming in, because the brands aren't necessarily promoting themselves where there's intent for the user to come in, and so they need like a mechanism to make that happen, and that's what you guys provide. And as long as that's sort of transparent, that's the beautiful thing about it. So it sort of works in harmony between all these different people and companies, I suppose. Is that the way you see it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's quite a basic kind of concept, really. But as I say, I've kind of instilled that in our business over the years, and it works really well. And I think people that kind of work for lead tech kind of get it, you know. And I think you know, really thinking about customer experience and you know, how can we improve that experience, almost cascades down and sort of really kind of produces some really positive things. You know, it's really good for the customer, it's really good for the partner, and everyone kind of wins. I guess that's the general philosophy at Lead Tech, is how do we produce really, really good journeys where the consumer understands, I guess, what's in it for them, and there's that kind of level of transparency. And the idea there is just to, in theory, is to pass a consumer over to one of our partner businesses where that level of intent and expectation is there.
Yeah, cool. What is that? Is that sort of journey in the way that you generate leads changed a lot since 2008, or is the process similar, or is it?
I think it's changed quite a bit. If I'm honest with you, you know, we've got lots of plans to look at this again. We're always looking at. I think things develop and evolve, don't they? And I think in this industry, like lots of kind of tech and innovative industries, where you know things tend to move quickly and tend to change quite quickly. If you don't change with them, you kind of get left behind. So, yeah, certainly when I look at companies out there in this space and what they're doing, I would be honest and say it hasn't changed a lot. But certainly in terms of a lead generation proposition, but certainly lead tech, it's really important that we embrace that change and lead by example. And I think focusing on sort of customer experience is a big part of our strategy moving forwards.
Yeah.
So one thing we often ask people who in a similar position, maybe in different industries, is the problems they have with the buyers of the leads, and specifically this kind of reputation is notoriously slow at contacting the leads, which frustrates lots of people in your position. But do you find that, and what are the challenges you face with your buyers and getting them to kind of act on things in the best way?
Yeah, I mean, it's a real challenge. And as I said, we kind of built a bit of a framework out as a result of this, I guess. Really, I guess years of experience just sort of working with different types of companies, and what has really kind of stood out over time is most of the companies that we work with aren't great at handling leads. Certainly, a lot of the smaller businesses. So we've kind of developed a number of services to help them if they're not very good at handling the leads. So that might be taking the lead engagement away from them, handling the contact piece for them. And not just that initial aspect and phase. We might work with them ongoing as well to continually nurture, what are essentially their prospective customers and trying to just drive that ROI for them. So it's a little bit of a mixture really between, giving them the knowledge and the tools to be able to work the leads themselves, or actually just doing it for them.
Why do you think it is that buyers can be slow at doing it? It's almost bad for them, isn't it? It's a bit like smoking, I guess, which a lot of people still do. Maybe it's the same sort of thing. Like, why do buyers not act immediately? Would you say? Is it don't have time, don't understand?
Yeah. It's I guess it's the question, isn't it? And I guess it depends on the business, but generally there's an element of I would say there's an element of experience. There is absolutely the process and the way they're set up and the kind of teams that have got available to them, so the resources. And I just don't think they believe really that they have to get on these leads. It's almost like a reverse psychology. They think that by getting on them straight away, it's almost a negative. And that's quite often some feedback that I've got back from partners. And obviously we know it's the opposite. So there's definitely a perception out there. What I found one of our biggest challenges is just alignment. It's alignment in that early stage of a relationship, especially when that trust isn't there, because it's kind of chicken and egg, isn't it? We've not kind of created that trust, and I think trying to get them to work a certain way when that might involve some big changes is quite a challenge.
Yeah, I could see that. I remember a while ago we were supplying leads into two clients, and one was into two call centers, and one was calling it immediately, and one was sort of sat on them or doing whatever, and they refused to do it. And it was similar to what you're saying, where they said, we don't think it makes that much of a difference. Anyway, it was for the same brand. The brand was buying leads and feeding it out to two centers, and we all jumped on a conference call to try and sort it out, and they brought up the stats of the conversion rates. And they were, outperforming them by sort of 3 times the ones that were calling it immediately. And so subsequently, the center that wasn't calling it immediately then called them immediately. But it sort of still annoyed me, because I was like, well, we almost didn't have to have this happen.
Yeah.
Like, if you'd have just done it, this wouldn't have had to be proven or anything. But I think, like you said, it's when the trust and relationship isn't built, everything's just almost like hearsay, isn't it?
Yeah. And it does come down to that trust, and it is a little bit of a chicken and egg. And I think how we try to overcome that is by our credentials and our experience, and just speak to them and say, look, this is a journey we've been on. This is what we've learned over the years, and we've put this, I guess, this framework together, which is designed to build that trust, but to give you that confidence that, if we work this way, then ultimately you'll get the results that you want. So, we can have that conversation, but it doesn't always work, because I think it's just human nature, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think that's one of our biggest challenges. But as I say, we've developed services as well to kind of work around that, where we really just don't think it's going to work if they try to do it themselves. We'll try sort of steer them down a different, down a different direction.
Yeah. So then you can take care of the leads themselves, I guess. And then I suppose as part of doing that, it's almost like extra qualification as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think on another level, it comes back to this, this what we call customer experience. We've got the consumer and we've got our customers, our clients, essentially. And I think it does come back to that and looking at that end-to-end piece and working out how can we deliver that best experience.
Yeah.
And it has really kind of helped us and stood the test of time, I think, as part of our strategy. So
cool.
So I just want to focus in on, I mean, you hinted it there, but I want to kind of go deep because this is what I called the podcast. And I said, you have more clients than you think, which, obviously people listening might be disappointed when I explain what I mean by that. But it was, a slightly clickbait title, which I was trying with, but it refers to a quote of yours. And if people listening have listened to a few episodes, we've actually mentioned this before on different episodes. And the quote is, what is it? We have two clients on the office, but could you explain what that quote fully is and what you mean by that?
Yeah, sure, Daniel. I mean, it's quite a simple concept. And I say it's something kind of we thought about this, really early on, and you almost visualize these things in your mind, don't you? And as you're kind of working your way through, I guess this lead generation journey, it just became apparent that, you ask yourself, what is our purpose? What is our role? What is it we're here to do in that sense? And it kind of always felt that we were kind of in the middle connecting people, very, very simplified kind of version of it. But that kind of resonated with me. And, another thing that I really like, and it's just a different way of looking at lead generation is, it's connecting people and hopefully trying to improve somebody's life. And I think, it doesn't always happen, but essentially, certainly in the space that we're in, the financial advice market, consumer trust is the number one kind of challenge for everybody, for us all, and trying to sort of break that down a little bit and overcome it by making better introductions. So yeah, that's what I mean, Daniel. Really, it's just really being clear about our role and acknowledging the fact that we're not just working for our clients, our partners. We have another customer there that, what I've found when I've looked at other lead generation businesses, where they do support and look at customer experience, it tends to be more weighted towards the clients, the brands, and they do tend to ignore the consumer, the customer. So that's all I mean by it, really.
I think, like you said, it's a sort of simple proposition, and like you said, you came up with it a while ago. But the reason why it sort of resonates with a lot of people is I think that similar people have probably had a similar idea, but they can't. It doesn't stand the test of time because the lure of money is too great, and that's when you start seeing the consumers like just data, just bits of information to make money on. And I've seen it happen millions of times. And I think that's the key, is the consistency of like that philosophy of having two clients. And there's another thing, which is obviously it's an easy thing to say, but a harder thing to implement. And it just comes down to that, is because when you're making money from leads, cheap and easy is always lurking there as like an attractive, it's like an angler fish that just wants to, you to go and grab it.
Totally agree.
And so I think the fact that, still, so I think originally you had another business in 99, wasn't it? But you started doing lead gen in 2008. So for all those years to carry that philosophy still to 2021 is the thing that's important. I think that's admirable, 100%.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, it's really challenging. I mean, there's obviously that commercial aspects, we're running a business. But what I've kind of realized and sort of recognized over time is, if you take a longer term view, I think with lead generation, and I can't speak for all the companies out there doing it. There's some really good companies doing it really well, I know that. But I do feel there's a trap of becoming quite kind of short term around it. And as I say, it very much links into, I guess, seeing customers and people, which is what they are. It's just data and a commodity. And I think, it's a very short term, win. And we all know that potential lead generation is quite a good space to be in, as a business if you do it well. But I found if you take a slightly longer term view, and it might cost you a little bit more to acquire a lead, but if it's a good lead, then ultimately everyone's kind of happy. And I think it's that introduction that resonates, and that value that you can create in that process that resonates with your teams internally as well. And I think, we can't underestimate how important it is to engage the people that work for us. Why do they get out of bed in the morning and come to work?
Well, for the views.
Well, clearly. So yeah, and it can sound a little bit like kind of sat on your soapbox a little bit, or stood on your soapbox a little bit. But I think it's an important message.
That's the key. It can sound like you say, it can sound like it, but it's not meant to. It's meant to just be like the fact that it's exactly that, seeing data as people rather than just data, I suppose.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I agree with you. I mean, there's a lot of companies that still, that other lead generation companies that think the same, have the same sort of philosophy. But I've been doing this a long time. I've seen a lot of people, and they'll cut corners. Especially because it's so easy. It's really, really easy to cut corners with data. Yeah. If you see it as data and not people. But the thing is, like you said, everyone wins doing it correctly. So you win, the customer wins, and your other customer wins as well. So everybody's happy. But it can mean short term, not as much revenue, but longer term, you're going to be around and everybody's going to be happy with you. And like you said, for your internal staff as well, they can see that you're not trying to cut corners, and see that you're doing the right thing, and see that you're trying to make a difference. And that's hugely important, like you said. Yeah, absolutely. And obviously over the last 12 months, it's been really difficult anyway, hasn't it? Obviously for us all, that disconnect with the business, just feeling connected to what we do as a business is just such a challenge for everybody. As business owners, it doesn't matter where you are in the organization, whatever you do, it's just been tough. So, trying to have something that can some common kind of purpose that can connect everybody, it definitely helps.
Amazing. Well, Nigel, thank you. Thank you for coming on the show and talking to us. And I say we've used your quote a few times before, so it's nice to actually attribute it to you and rather just stop plagiarizing and pretending it's something we say. But thank you so much for joining us. We've really enjoyed talking to you. It's fantastic. Thank you.
Okay.
Cheers, Nigel. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the B2C Lead Generation Podcast, the show for serious lead generators. Be sure to hit subscribe to hear more from those at the very cutting edge of the lead gen world.